Advanced TV Herstory, the podcast that brings you fresh perspective on the importance of TV in our lives. We tell stories of leadership, persistence, and achievement of TV women, because in the lives of women, no other media platform has influenced or inspired so many. Lo, these 60 years. Women of all ages have been impacted by what they've seen and will see on TV. So join us for a little advanced TV herstory by streaming it directly on our website, tvherstory.com, or anywhere you find podcasts. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. Regardless of what you were doing or watching from 1997 to 2001, MTV created Daria out of Beavis and Butthead's rib. Some might say both animated series about white teenagers were wildly influential. Daria is a feminist time capsule. The script is sophisticated and philosophical. Gen Xers who came of age before social media and the internet changed everything about being a teenager, teenage life, how parents parented teenagers, and even TV viewing habits, all of those Gen Xers saw a little bit of Daria or Jane in themselves and knew firsthand the chasm between the jocks and the cheerleaders and everyone else. Now, others might say that Beavis and Butthead marked the first signal of the fall of America as we know it. But I digress. So here we are in 2018, and headlines, major, life-changing headlines, policy-changing headlines, a time when one record-setting march happens one month, and then the next one, another one happens with more people on a more timely and urgent matter that needs to change. But listeners, the faces who are leading these marches and holding these press conferences are millennial and Gen X women, and they're equipped with tenacity, impatience, and boundless energy. I truly and totally admire them for speaking out with intelligence, for saying no more to social issues that have been tolerated for too long. The smart girls are taking over. But how did they get so comfortable with saying what they think, particularly when it's critical of the status quo? That was not something the baby boomers have ever done very well. How are these young women and those who identify as women, how are they so fearless? Who taught them that it's okay not to smile? Boomers, colleague boomers, it wasn't necessarily Murphy Brown or Julia Sugarbaker or Gloria Steinem. It was Daria.
Things could get any more pathetic, but obviously I was wrong.
Come on, ladies. You've got a lot of work to make up.
Tell me that at least I have my integrity.
Integrity's a funny word.
Well, then at least tell me I'm marginally less corrupt than the jocks.
You refuse to participate in a crooked system where good grades are exchanged for athletic performance. But you didn't try to reform the system either.
For fear of complete teenage exile.
Right. So the system continues, you haven't redeemed yourself, and we're ostracized anyway.
Come on now, stop trying to paint a rosy picture.
You know what?
What?
They really are preparing us for the real world.
Daria! Jane! Come on! It's time for splits! Ow!
La 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 la.
Daria aired for 65 episodes and 2 special movies. It reran in the late aughts and is on MTV Classic and available on MTV.com today. Where was I during that time? Raising kids, taking care of old people, working a job, serving an elected office, generally being exhausted. I only watched the whole series recently and have to say I loved every minute of it. 2 teenagers whose conversations ran the gamut. But most often, none of that was about guys. 2 teenagers who were a bit jaded and were learning all the coming-of-age lessons that we also saw from My So-Called Life, Freaks and Geeks, Gilmore Girls. But unlike those hour-long dramas, Daria and Jane, in 21 minutes, lived their animated lives at Lawndale High or in their bedrooms, sans social networks and smartphones. In the days when teenage angst was simpler because it didn't involve nearly as much bullying, fear of missing out, and exposure. And I'll just say it now, if you're a fan of TV herstory and want to experience monumental influences in American feminism, then yes, Daria needs to go to the top of your list. Check your streaming accounts, or for sure, MTV Classic or online, or simply go old school. And even if you have to buy another DVD player, buy the boxed set and binge it with your daughter, your mother, the family, or your friends, and relish this really excellent writing. Here's how the vocal talent, the folks who voiced multiple characters throughout the series run, described the series and the characters. And listeners, in this clip, lines from the show are commingled with interview highlights, because this is all from an extra from the DVD boxed set.
Don't worry, I don't have low self-esteem. It's a mistake.
I'll say.
I have low esteem for everyone else.
As a positive female role model, Daria's great because she is. She stands up for herself and she doesn't put up with anything.
What does woe mean?
It's like the feeling you'd get if the Super Bowl were preempted by Antiques Roadshow.
Whoa!
See?
The scripts kind of captured what was going on at that time with high schoolers.
So what are you going to fail at? Giving a damn?
I could fail to see the merit of this assignment.
Or succeed in finding it a waste of time?
She and Jane really gave voice to an entire population of the disaffected youth, the people that just felt like the outsiders, the floaters, the ones that didn't quite fit in, that sort of were in observation mode all through high school, where you just can't quite connect.
But I'm not miserable. I'm just not like them.
Tight writing, well-played deadpan delivery by our two main characters with distinct voices for all the other characters as well. Daria Morgendorffer was well-read, a good writer, and new to Lawndale High at the start of the series, new as a 15-year-old. One of the first students she meets in self-esteem class is Jane Lane. Jane is artistic, level-headed, poor at math, but a great runner. And then there's hair. Jane has one of the most epic haircuts in all of animation. Conjure up images of Marge Simpson or Pebbles Flintstone with the bone in her hair, but somewhere in there is Jane Lane with some of the most gnarly hair for all the ages. Did I say tight writing? Did I mention clever, intelligent?
These are really good. I didn't know you studied life drawing.
Yeah, last summer.
You're really bursting out of the picture plane here.
Oh yeah, that particular model was quite bursty. I think she had her bursts done.
Speaking of which, Brittany invited me to her party.
No kidding. Are you going?
Sure. And after that, I think I'll swallow glass. Why? Do you want to go?
Oh no, I'd much rather stay home and listen to my brother practice the opening to Come As You Are. I bet I could get some great sketches there.
Well, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people posing. If you want to go, just make believe you're me. When you're popular, all unpopular people look alike anyway.
Hi, I'm Daria. Go to hell. It won't work. My face is too expressive.
For all its innovation and edginess, its appeal to someone born in, say, 1980 or 82 in its first airing, the people of Lawndale come across as pretty white. Daria's classmates, Jody Landon and Mac McKenzie, are the only students of color, and that's pretty noticeable when you're watching it today. Mrs. Lee, the principal, is a recurring character, Asian American. Now, Jody Landon, the smart, hardworking, overachieving daughter of successful black parents, is one of Daria's only intellectual peers, and she's a recurring character. She's even keel and she's organized. By dating Mac, who's a varsity athlete, Jody really shows that she's very good at fitting into all groups. While plots generally revolve around matters of timeless teenage angst, the writers of Daria occasionally called out sexism, elitism, and a host of society's contradiction and disappointments, the ones that are kind of essential for a teenage or family-style drama. But in particular, given that they only had 21 minutes to work with, they presented some of that call-out with all of the intensity that a teenager has when he or she first confronts, encounters, sees what is unfair, what isn't right in the world. So in a rare poke at racial profiling, this powerful scene brought Jody front and center. She and Daria were partners on a project for economics class, where they were to develop a case for obtaining a small business loan. The assignment required them to present their plan to an actual banker.
And so Millennium Project Enterprises plans to empower young people to make their own investment decisions so that investing becomes as natural to them as, say, going out for a fast food hamburger.
Because we all know how natural those hamburgers are.
And just exactly what is your role in the company, Miss Morgendorffer?
Public relations officer.
Daria is the inside person. I'm the outside person.
Very wise decision. Well, I tell you what, it's a fascinating idea and very impressive presentation. But two girls still in high school with no business experience... You're what we call high-risk applicants. I really don't think the bank will give you a loan. Unless, Daria, you want to ask your father to co-sign for it.
I don't think I can do that. He's already had one heart attack.
Oh, well then. I'm sorry.
What about my father?
What about him? Does he know anything about business?
He helped me put together this proposal that you claimed was so impressive.
Your father's not Andrew Landon, is he?
That's him.
The folding coffee cup guy?
Yes, that's my dad.
Well then, Jody, you've got business savvy in your blood. Why don't I run your plan by my boss and see what he thinks? Maybe we can work something out.
Why? You don't give loans to high-risk applicants. Unless maybe you're hoping you'll get a little business from their fathers.
Now, Jody...
My father's the same high-risk color that I am, you know.
Well, I guess that makes me the outside person.
For a show about teens, there's surprisingly little reference to sex, though heterosexuality seems to be the norm. Except when Jane went to art camp, when she was hit on by a somewhat older woman artist, and all you can call that is a pass in passing. Credit the show's general disinterest, I have to say, in sex to wanting to continually keep Daria and Jane's friendship perhaps at the forefront, as well as to build out Daria's character flaws and immaturity. For all her jadedness, they, the writers, love to show how uncomfortable Daria is with sex and intimacy, making her perhaps closer to being a real teen than most people would even like to admit. I guess that's one more reason so many can relate to her. TV historians, it's time to assign the creators Glenn Eichler and Susie Lewis, the writers, the animators, and the vocal talent, particularly Tracy Grandstaff and Wendy Hoops, some serious credit for helping viewers become smarter feminists. Because it's from a teenage girl's perspective that we see life. When you're the one who feels like you don't fit in, it's an incredibly powerful thing. It's a powerful feeling to find your story told on TV. Now, the world is a more accepting place today. It's not a perfect place, but it's more accepting because seeing Daria on TV empowered women and men to stay true to themselves. That's really the premise. That is what Daria is trying to do. Even though she recognizes her own shortcomings, she's not ready to change just because she's being told to. And seeing this character who speaks one's language, if one is not in the norm, if not part of the popular group, seeing that character speak in your language and sharing your outlook, it makes it more acceptable to accept yourself. And so this is so much a time capsule because teenage life isn't totally like this anymore, but that notion of not fitting in is timeless. Teenage life is in fact so much more complicated today. And we have to ask ourselves, is there a series with a similar impact that is appearing today? Listeners, I'm asking this not as a rhetorical question. I would like to know what you see. What messages are out there for young women and men, teenagers, that helps them wrestle with these candid conversations of life and love and relationships, and is relatable, is accessible, and isn't over the top, that it's actually believable, not feeling scripted. Send me a note or tweet me because I'm really curious, and I'll provide you ways to get a hold of me later in this episode. It is true, however, that impact can only be measured by those who experienced something live time. And as I confessed way up front in 1997, I had other things on my plate. So I watched the series with an eye to understanding its impact and then sought to verify that impact. This almost forgotten but totally beloved iconic series is powerful. We know it's powerful. But don't just take it from me. I asked folks in my podcasting networks to provide me their impressions, their memories, anything that conjures up the feeling of being a teenager, finally understood by viewing this MTV classic. So here's Chris Revill from Let's Chat with Chris Revill, and he shared this comment.
Hey y'all, this is Chris Revill. I host a podcast called Let's Chat with Revill and Friends, where the wonderful Cynthia has been on twice and is always an amazing guest. So nice of Cynthia to ask me to reflect on my thoughts of Daria. Daria is a cartoon for MTV. I remember loving the show. I remember not necessarily like relating with it because it wasn't like my high school, but I definitely just remember knowing kids like Daria. I think it's the first cartoon that I remember. I'm sure there's others, but they did like a musical episode. I remember this amazing episode about like public art where Jane made a painting of like a cheerleader, and it's like, oh, she couldn't be thinner. She knows she's the winner, so she goes home and she throws up dinner, and then she edited the painting, and it was this whole debate about public art. As much as I love the Daria character, I love Jane, I love Trent. I thought those characters were fascinating, and Kevin and Britley and the weird teacher. I just remember not seeing any other cartoons, and I love animation, huge fan of animation. I remember not really loving Beavis and Butthead, but being a big fan of King of the Hill, and always thinking Daria had this like realism of King of the Hill that I absolutely loved about it. And I also think it probably formed the type of crushes I would have on women going forward, like the Daria and Liz Levin types. Man, I wish this would come back on streaming, because at one point it was, and I was watching all of it, and it just held up so well. I just thought it was the coolest thing that Daria's parents were these just super corporate rich people, and she was this kind of goth person, and I was of that age where goth is very popular, and I was never, but I had plenty of friends who I knew who came from these just like seemingly perfect Norman Rockwell-esque house, but things weren't perfect inside. Even though I thought Daria's parents were pretty good. Her dad was a little kooky, and one of the things I always loved was the relationship between her and Quinn, her sister, the fact that they were so different, but they loved each other. I don't know, it was just so much fun. Cynthia, thank you so much for letting me do this clip. I can be found on Twitter and all the things at Let's Chat Podcast. And please check out my show. And honestly, just check out the episodes of Cynthia first, because she's an amazing host, as you know, and an amazing guest on my show. Thanks so much.
And wow, was I glad that Justine channeled her inner Daria all over again to bring us some memories conjured by the mere thought of deadpan skewers and the green blazer.
Hi, this is Justine from the Cutaways Podcast, and I'd like to talk about how Daria influenced my life. On my first day of high school, my soon-to-be best friend asked me if I watched Daria. He, a Trent lookalike, noted my long brown hair and glasses. I very much then made a habit of catching the show after school henceforth. Not only did I look like Daria, I was like Daria. I wasn't popular, I was brainy, and I definitely preferred sarcasm over school spirit. I can still get my mom to go, "Ugh, Justine," to basically any conversation we have. Daria was cool because she said what was on her mind. She didn't seem to be influenced by petty things like consumerism, or even worse, being liked. Well, there were some episodes, like when she doesn't wear her glasses or gets a belly button ring, but these are Trent Crush episodes and we're only human. I haven't watched Daria in a long time. I mostly remember her standing up for herself and for the small, trusted circle of people she called friends, or even for the people she didn't call friends. Daria fought for her beliefs, but she wasn't dumb about it. Like she said in her graduation speech, stand firm for what you believe in until and unless logic and experience prove you wrong. I have a screen cap from Daria saved to my phone for inspiration. It's Daria saying, "Yes, and I believe there is something intrinsically wrong with that system, and I have dedicated myself to changing it." This I find helpful in both my life and career as someone working in the film industry. She was one of my female feminist heroes I had growing up and still have, that tells me I have a right to my voice and opinion. When starting a podcast, it's this voice that egged me on. It's one that says you can be yourself and you don't have to change to fit in. And this will make you all the more happier in this sick, sad world. You can listen to me more on The Cutaways at thecutaways.com and find us on social media as at Cutaways Podcast. I am on Instagram and Twitter at Mixtape Montage.
When Daria originally aired, it was on edgy cable TV marketed to teens and young adults. When written up in magazines or reviewed, Daria was often referred to as the misery chick. Now, listeners, remember that it's only been in recent years, and largely through social media and everyone sort of finding their voice and realizing a certain amount of strength by being able to put comments out into Facebook or Twitter that perhaps they didn't necessarily have the courage to say in person. But remember the wave of pushback finally, that it wasn't okay to tell a woman or a girl to smile? Well, Daria's writers had that pegged way back in 1997 with this, and it totally sets the tone for where we are today. Daria's baby boomer competitive lawyer mother, Helen, scolds her for not smiling in a picture, and Daria replies, deadpan, "I don't like to smile unless I have a reason." And Helen tells her that people judge by someone's expression, which is a classic mother statement that I'm sure I made to my own kids more than a few times, and certainly heard from my own mother. To which Daria replies, "And I believe there's something intrinsically wrong with that system. I have dedicated myself to changing it." Loyal listeners, when we march, when we petition, when we send contributions or vote, when we file complaints and lawsuits, or do whatever is necessary today, this year, to change the systems that aren't serving all members of society as they should, Daria would approve. She might even use an exclamation point or emoji. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, okay? TV historians, the clip of vocal leads Tracy Grandstaff, Wendy Hoops, and others is pulled from the cast interview segment that is included as an extra on the DVD boxed set. Many thanks to Justine Gendron of the Cutaways Podcast for her insightful audio contribution, and Chris Revill of the podcast Let's Chat with Chris Revill is about the nicest guy in podcasting and can hold his own talking about TV women. I was thrilled when he agreed to send me some audio about what he remembers from his younger days watching Daria. And finally, this episode, an advanced TV herstory as a podcast, wouldn't exist without the many contributions of daughter Allison Abrams. She not only lent me the DVD boxed set, but provided commentary on some of the more seminal episodes. Those that emphasize the growth of relationships that Daria had with her sister Quinn, her mother Helen, and Jane in particular. Thank you to Jen Eads of Brassy Broadcasting for audio editing prowess. And listeners, help a non-podcast listeners access this show by guiding them to www.tvherstory.com, where, at the very minimum, all they need to do is scroll the growing vault of episodes and just press play. Follow us on Twitter at TV Herstory. On Facebook, search for Advanced TV Herstory, a podcast, and on Instagram, Advanced TV Herstory. Contact us via the website or by emailing advancedtvherstory@gmail.com. That's all one word. Finally, if you find value in this podcast, consider becoming a patron and assist with funding the investment in its future. To learn more, go to tvherstory.com, scroll down on the homepage to the box that reads Become a Patron, and when you click on it, it will take you to a magical place that explains more. But whether you choose to invest in this podcast or not, Please know that we appreciate your ideas and feedback, your likes, your retweets, and reviews. This podcast is about the wonderful, talented, under-celebrated women of TV, and serves as a reminder of just how influential they were and are. Their stories need to be told. That's why I podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.